My brother pushed me for years to chase my dream career, then torched the biggest opportunity of my life. That's why my company now carries his name. Ever since I was a kid, all I ever wanted was to open my own restaurant. And funny enough, my brother Elias's dream was to see me do it. He was my loudest cheerleader. When I got the lease on a tiny storefront downtown at 26, Elias was even more thrilled than I was. He showed up every weekend to paint walls, haggle with suppliers, taste every dish twice. Our whole family joked that he should just be a co-owner. The build-out went smoothly right up until the week before our grand opening. I'd landed something huge. A famous food critic had agreed to come to a private preview dinner, the kind of review that makes or breaks a new place. Elias had been strangely quiet all week, but I chalked it up to nerves on my behalf. The night of the preview, everything was ready. The critic was due at 7. At 6:15, I stepped into the walk-in cooler to grab the proteins for the tasting menu, and the shelves were bare. Every cut of fish, every portion of meat, the whole centerpiece of the meal, gone. I stood there in the cold, my heart hammering, sure I was losing my mind. Then I checked the security feed on my phone and saw it. Elias, an hour earlier, loading everything into coolers and carrying it out the back door. I couldn't breathe. My brother had sabotaged me on the most important night of my life. The critic came. I served a scrambled, improvised menu of whatever I could pull together, apologizing the whole time. The review that ran a week later was brutal, unfocused, unready. Reservations dried up before we'd even really begun. And Elias vanished. He wasn't answering calls or texts. His apartment sat dark. Nobody had seen him. Over the next month, my life came apart. I nearly lost the lease. Family members took sides, half convinced Elias had snapped from jealousy, half blaming me for something I couldn't name. The rumors spread through our small restaurant community fast. Other chefs stopped returning my calls. I spent nights sitting alone in the empty dining room, staring at the menus we never got to serve, replaying every moment, desperate to understand how the person who believed in me most could gut me like this. Then, almost 3 months later, Elias showed up at my door looking like he hadn't slept in weeks. Before I could say a word, he sank onto my step and started crying, clutching a folder of papers. Through sobs, he apologized and said there was nothing else he could have done. I demanded to know what that meant, and he told me about a health scare he'd hidden for months. He'd been getting sick, losing weight, and after a battery of tests, the doctors found something in our family's records, a link to a rare, aggressive foodborne contaminant tied to a specific supplier. The same supplier I'd signed an exclusive contract with for the restaurant. Elias had found out that a batch from that supplier, the exact shipment I'd stocked for the preview, had been flagged in another state for a contamination outbreak that had already hospitalized several people and killed 2. The recall notice hadn't reached our region yet. He'd tried to warn me, but he knew me, knew I'd insist it was fine, that I couldn't cancel on the most important critic of my career, that I'd push through and serve it anyway. So he made a choice. He stole every contaminated product out of my cooler the night of the preview, knowing it would wreck the dinner, knowing I'd hate him for it because a bad review was survivable and a room full of poisoned guests on opening night was not. He'd spent the months since chasing down proof, terrified I wouldn't believe him without it. The folder was full of it. The recall bulletin, lab results, the supplier's shutdown notice. I took it all to the health department the next morning. They confirmed everything. The shipment I'd stocked had tested positive for the same contaminant. If I'd served that tasting menu, the critic and everyone at that table could have ended up in the hospital or worse, and my name would have been on it forever. Elias hadn't destroyed my dream. He'd saved it, and probably saved lives, and let me believe he'd betrayed me rather than risk me overriding him. When I finally reopened, months later, with a new supplier and a fresh start, there was never any question in my mind what to call it. I put his name over the door. Elias's, it reads now, in gold letters, after the brother who let me hate him to keep me safe.